What if I told you that one of the most powerful nations in the world is considering buying an entire island, an island that's been sovereign for centuries? What if that island was Greenland? Yes, Greenland, a place known for its vast, untouched landscapes and its position at the heart of global geopolitics. You might ask, why? Why would the United States want to acquire Greenland? The answer is simple. It's not just about the land, it's about power, resources, and security. Imagine this. Greenland sits in the middle of the Arctic, where the future of global conflict will unfold. It's at the crossroads between North America, Europe, and Russia. It's the perfect place to monitor missile threats, track naval activity, and control the flow of resources. But that's not all. The island's resources, from rare earth minerals to untapped oil reserves, are becoming more valuable as climate change melts the ice, making access easier. So here's the question we must confront. What happens when the leader of a superpower pushes to take control of such a crucial piece of land, ignoring historical claims and challenging the sovereignty of another nation? This isn't just about a piece of real estate, it's about the future of international relations, global security, and the balance of power. To understand how we got here, let's take a closer look at the history and context behind this controversial conversation. The United States wants Greenland, but there's a catch. The island is not for sale. Denmark, the country that governs Greenland, has repeatedly made it clear Greenland is not a commodity to be traded. But this hasn't stopped President Trump. He and his team have been actively discussing the possibility of buying Greenland. Why? Greenland's location in the Arctic is vital for US security. It's not just a cold, remote island, it's a strategic asset. The United States has operated a military base there since World War II, the Thule Air Base. This base plays a critical role in early warning systems against missile attacks. And with rising tensions in the Arctic, where Russia and China are increasingly asserting their presence, Greenland's value only grows. But here's the problem. Greenland belongs to Denmark, and Denmark is a NATO ally. An attempt to take control of the island, whether by force or diplomacy, would challenge the very foundation of NATO's security arrangements. So, what's driving this intense focus on Greenland? Is it the strategic military interests, or is it the vast, untapped resources? To truly understand why this issue is so critical today, let's dive deeper into the historical context of Greenland's importance in global politics. To understand the gravity of today's conversation, we must first go back in time. Greenland's history has been shaped by centuries of colonial influence, particularly from Denmark. In 1721, Denmark formally established its control over Greenland. Since then, the island has remained a Danish territory, though with increasing autonomy over the years. Greenland's strategic importance didn't become apparent until the Cold War. In the 1950 seconds, the United States set up the Thule Air Base to keep an eye on Soviet missile launches. This base has been critical in monitoring Arctic airspace and protecting North America. But it's not just military significance that matters. Greenland is also home to rich natural resources, many of which were once out of reach due to the island's frozen landscape. As climate change accelerates and the ice melts, new opportunities arise. Greenland holds vast reserves of rare earth minerals, uranium, and iron resources that are becoming increasingly valuable on the global market. But beyond this, Greenland's location is key. It sits in the middle of the Arctic, a region that is rapidly becoming a geopolitical hotspot. Russia and China are already positioning themselves to take advantage of the Arctic's opening waters and resources. And with that, Greenland has found itself at the center of a new geopolitical struggle. But before we dive into the latest crisis unfolding around Greenland, let's explore the mechanisms behind the Trump administration's strategy. Just when you think things couldn't get any more intense, a new crisis erupts. In 2019, President Trump made an official offer to buy Greenland. At first, it seemed like a strange idea, almost laughable. But then the response came. Denmark rejected the offer, calling it absurd. And yet, Trump didn't back down. Instead, he went even further. His administration started discussing the potential use of military force to acquire Greenland. That's right, military force. This was more than just a diplomatic gesture. This was a full-on escalation of the rhetoric, suggesting that all options were on the table. What did this mean? For Denmark, a NATO ally, it was a serious threat. Denmark's sovereignty was being openly challenged by the leader of the United States, a member of the same military alliance. But Trump and his team saw it differently. They argued that Greenland was vital to US national security, and if diplomacy didn't work, they were prepared to explore more aggressive measures. It's at this point that the world began to take notice. What had started as a seemingly bizarre proposal was now a high-stakes diplomatic and military issue. But to fully grasp the situation, we need to understand the hidden mechanisms at play, the real reasons behind these discussions, and why Greenland matters so much. So, what's really driving this? Behind the surface-level discussions about buying Greenland, there's a much deeper game at play. The US sees Greenland as a critical strategic asset, one that offers more than just military advantages. It's about controlling the Arctic region, an area that is rapidly becoming the new frontier for global powers. The region's vast untapped resources, its proximity to Russia, and its potential for controlling shipping routes make it a coveted prize. For the US, securing Greenland would be a powerful move in countering the growing influence of Russia and China in the Arctic. These nations have already begun to invest heavily in the region, building military outposts and increasing their presence. And then there's the military aspect. Greenland's Thule air base is essential for early missile detection and military surveillance. This base gives the US a strategic advantage, especially in a world where tensions with adversaries like Russia and China are escalating. But the mechanics of this aren't as simple as just acquiring a piece of land. Greenland is home to a unique and proud people, its Inuit population, and its autonomy under Denmark. Acquiring Greenland is not just about seizing a landmass. It's about navigating a complex web of political, social, and environmental factors. But this strategy doesn't come without consequences. Let's take a look at the second crisis that arises when this geopolitical gamble is put to the test. Now, just when it seemed like things couldn't get any more tense, another crisis erupts. The idea of purchasing Greenland is no longer just a matter of diplomacy and military strategy. It has now turned into a full-blown international issue. In recent weeks, the situation escalated further when high-ranking officials in the Trump administration made public statements hinting at the use of military force to secure the territory. This sparked outrage, not just in Denmark, but across Europe. Denmark's leaders, including the Prime Minister, openly condemned the rhetoric. They made it clear that any attempt to seize Greenland by force would be met with resistance. But it wasn't just Denmark that was reacting. European leaders began to rally behind Denmark, issuing statements of solidarity and support. It was a clear message: Greenland's sovereignty would not be compromised. For the United States, this was a wake-up call. The threat of military action was putting not just diplomatic relations with Denmark at risk, but the entire NATO alliance. But the Trump administration pressed on, arguing that Greenland was crucial to the US national security interests. The administration's position was clear. The US would do what it took to secure its interests in the Arctic. However, the real question is not just about military threats or diplomacy, it's about the human impact. How will this potential acquisition affect the people living in Greenland? Let's explore the impact on the citizens of this remote island. As the conversation about Greenland's future intensifies, there's one crucial group often overlooked: the people of Greenland themselves. For them, the idea of being sold or annexed is a bitter reality, one that stirs deep emotions. Greenlanders are not just passive subjects in this geopolitical drama. They are proud of their heritage, their autonomy, and their way of life. Inuit hunters like Alekatsiak Pieri, who lives in the remote northern town of Kanag, have spoken out about the idea of becoming part of the United States. For him, it's not just about the politics, it's about survival. The sea ice is melting. and hunters cannot make a living anymore, he says. It would be switching from one master to another, from one occupier to another. This sentiment is echoed by many Greenlanders who feel the weight of the decisions made far away in Washington, D.C. But it's not just about the loss of autonomy. There's fear that their land, their resources, and their way of life will be exploited for foreign gain. Many Greenlanders view the push for U.S. control as a new form of colonialism, an extension of centuries-old exploitation. And yet, for all the anger and frustration, many feel helpless. The power to decide their future lies not in their hands, but in those of distant governments. While the people of Greenland wrestle with these fears, the global stage is shifting. The world's eyes are now on the Arctic, and the consequences of this geopolitical struggle are reaching far beyond Greenland itself. The debate over Greenland isn't just a local or regional issue, it's a global one. As tensions rise between the United States and Denmark, the ripple effects are felt across the world, particularly in Europe and the Arctic region. The geopolitical stakes are enormous, with Russia and China already expanding their presence in the Arctic. For years, the Arctic has been a contested zone, with nations vying for control over new shipping routes and the resources beneath the ice. The melting of the Arctic ice cap is opening up previously inaccessible areas, and Greenland's strategic location has made it a key piece in the global chessboard. If the US were to acquire Greenland, it would solidify its dominance in the region, effectively pushing back against Russia's increasing militarization of the Arctic. But it could also push other nations, particularly China, into a deeper rivalry with the US for control of Arctic resources. The ramifications of such a move would reverberate throughout NATO, where alliances could be tested and global power dynamics reshuffled. For the European Union, the situation is even more complex. Many EU nations, including France and Germany, have already voiced strong support for Denmark, emphasizing the importance of respecting national sovereignty and territorial integrity. Yet, the growing tension between the US and its NATO allies raises important questions about the future of the alliance itself. As we look at the international implications, it's crucial to consider what the future might hold. Will the US get its way, or will diplomacy and global pressures force a different path? Let's explore three potential scenarios. As we look toward the future, the question remains, what happens next? There are three possible scenarios to consider. Each one brings its own set of challenges, risks, and potential consequences. The best-case scenario, diplomacy wins. In the best-case scenario, cooler heads prevail. Diplomatic negotiations between the US, Denmark, and Greenland lead to a peaceful resolution. The US could secure its interests in the Arctic, perhaps through a strategic partnership without violating Greenland's sovereignty. The international community supports this approach, and Greenland's people feel that their interests are respected. This scenario allows for cooperation in the Arctic, with all players maintaining a delicate balance of power. The Arctic remains a region of peaceful competition, where resources are shared and the geopolitical tensions of the past are mitigated. The middle ground, a tense standoff. The second scenario is a tense standoff, where the US continues to push for influence in Greenland, but Denmark and the European Union remain resolute in defending its sovereignty. This situation could lead to a prolonged period of tension, with military buildups in the Arctic and a strained NATO alliance. In this scenario, Greenland remains a geopolitical flashpoint, but neither side is willing to cross the line into full conflict. Instead, both the US and Denmark engage in diplomatic maneuvering, but the uncertainty over Greenland's future lingers. The worst-case scenario, escalation and conflict. The worst-case scenario is one where diplomatic efforts fail and the situation escalates into conflict. If the US continues to press its claims over Greenland and Denmark refuses to back down, the risk of military confrontation grows. The geopolitical ramifications would be enormous, not just for NATO, but for the entire world order. A military conflict over Greenland could trigger a larger confrontation between the US and its adversaries, especially Russia, which has significant strategic interests in the Arctic. The repercussions of such a conflict would be felt worldwide, with global markets, alliances, and security structures potentially shattered. Whatever the outcome, one thing is clear: the future of Greenland will shape the future of global geopolitics. As we wrap up this analysis, let's reflect on the key insights and the final thoughts on this critical issue. As we conclude, it's clear that the situation with Greenland is far more than just a territorial dispute. It's a microcosm of the larger geopolitical struggles that will define the future of the Arctic and of global power dynamics. Greenland represents a critical intersection of military, economic, and environmental interests. The decisions made here will reverberate for years, shaping the way nations interact, how alliances are tested, and how the balance of power is maintained in an increasingly unpredictable world. The question now is, will diplomacy succeed, or will the world be drawn into a new era of conflict over the Arctic? One thing is certain: Greenland is not just a distant landmass. It is a pivotal piece in the global chessboard, and the choices made in the coming months will have consequences far beyond the Arctic. They will define the future of international relations, the security of entire nations, and the very future of our planet. So, what do you think? Should Greenland be part of the United States, or is there a better path forward for the world's most strategic region? This is just the beginning of the story. As the world watches, we can only wait to see how this crucial chapter unfolds. If this analysis has sparked new questions or thoughts, share this video with others. Let's keep the conversation going, because the future of global geopolitics depends on the choices we make today.